Hardly an acquaintance, a local boy. He came forward of his own accord. I'd no more than got my question out before he was telling me he'd done it." "Did he tell you why?" "Just that he thought it was a good day to go out shooting." "Why did you question him in the first place? Has he shot at people before this? And where," Rutledge added to himself, "had a boy found those cartridge casings to hang them so conveniently at the scene?" Smith, not liking the direction Rutledge's questions were taking, frowned. "We went to him because he's generally roaming about the countryside in fair weather. He's particularly fond of the Massingham grounds. They include the pasture you described. Mrs. Massingham is kind to Tommy, and he sometimes takes advantage of that to go hunting." "With a revolver?" Rutledge asked, eyebrows raised. Smith shook his head. "Slingshot. He couldn't tell me where he got the weapon. Not very bright is Tommy Crowell. Never a troublemaker before this, you understand, but there's a first time for everything, and he's old enough to get into mischief you'd forgive a younger boy. My guess is he found the weapon somewhere, in a house or barn, and simply helped himself to it without a thought of asking permission. He's always had a weak grasp of private ownership. Not thievery so much as just borrowing for a bit, as he'd put it." "There can't be that many loaded revolvers lying about in Hertford," Rutledge persisted. "Does your Mrs. Massingham have one?" Smith was on the defensive now. "Her husband was a cavalry officer. He kept his weapons locked away. To my knowledge, she hasn't touched them since he was killed in the Boer War. She said as much." "Which means," Hamish responded in the back of Rutledge's mind, "that you wouldn't know if one was missing." And Smith, in awe of the Massinghams, most certainly wouldn't have questioned her word. "I'd like to see this Tommy Crowell for myself." Rutledge folded his serviette and nodded to the woman who had served their meal. She turned to bring him the reckoning. "Where does he live? Or have you taken him into custody?" "Now?" Smith asked, gulping the last of his tea. "There's no need, but there is," Rutledge told him, already scanning the charges. "I'm leaving for London early tomorrow. No, don't bother, I've taken care of it." Smith almost ran at his heels on their way to the door. "The boy can't pay for the damages to your windscreen," he said, huffing with the effort. "I've already spoken with his mother. There's no money." "I'm not interested in money," Rutledge answered as he reached his motor car in the yard behind the Three Feathers. "Where is he now? Have you charged him?" "I wasn't intending. I was going to hold him overnight to put the fear of God into him in the hope he'd show me where he tossed that revolver, but his mother begged me. Then take me to where they live." Smith cranked the motor car for Rutledge and then climbed into the passenger seat. "A mile from the Massingham estate there's a lane that turns down to the east. Follow that another mile or so, and I'll tell you where to stop." Rutledge drove out of Hertford, back the way he'd come, and found the lane with no difficulty. It was rutted, and the motor car bounced unpleasantly for some distance before the row of cottages came into view, smoke from their chimneys wreathing the roofs in the cold night air. Smith indicated the third house on the left, and Rutledge came to a halt. "Let me speak to the mother. You'll terrify her. Scotland Yard invading her sitting-room." He got out and knocked at the door. A worn woman of perhaps 40 answered, and then stared in alarm over his shoulder at the tall man behind Smith, dressed in a London-made coat and hat. "You're not going back on your word?" she began accusingly. "I promised I'd keep him to home." "There's nothing to worry you, Mrs. Crowell. I'd just like to speak with Tommy for a bit. This is Mr. Rutledge. It was his car that was damaged, but he hasn't come about repayment." They stepped under the low lintel and into a small